Oh, definitely. And you mentioned about mental health there and depression as well.
Yeah.
I mean, are you okay at the moment, or are you okay at
Yes.
the moment? Yeah.
I'm doing really, really well, thank God. I have been for
Thank
a long
God.
time. But yeah, I'm very open about it. I have OCD, I have depression, and I find it's really important to talk about them because luckily our industry is getting better at being open about it.
Hmm.
I'm very open about it on my podcast too because many of the artists I interview also suffer from similar things. It can be like a really good way to speak on it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've really learned how to approach my life and my career in ways that are much healthier
Hmm.
than I used to. So luckily, I'm in a good place and I'm excited about the future now.
I'm
So
so glad to hear. I'm so glad to
yeah.
hear that. And do you feel like your podcast has kind of helped you in a way, in terms of like kind of like in a therapeutic sort of way? Because I
Hmm.
don't realize a lot of people like kind of like they do talk about their problems, don't they, over podcasts without actually realizing it sometimes. Do you feel like that sometimes it's like helped you without you actually realizing it?
That's a great question. I don't know if it does so much in the talking about it. I mean, it's definitely empowering. I did this episode with Julian Baker a little while back,
Mhm.
and she's extremely open about her own mental health. I think it's one of my favorite episodes I've ever recorded. Um, it was more that it was empowering, that particular one, of being like, we get to speak on this in a way that's going to help other people hear themselves and know that they're not alone and know that they can talk about it and overcome it and all that. But I think it's helped me more in a different way. It's sort of happened very organically. Like, as much as I love my podcast, I didn't know if this was kind of what I wanted from my life. But over the last while, more and more, I've realized that even though right now I'd really love to work for a record label and stuff, in the long term, getting to interview artists and create building this thing gives my life so much fulfillment and meaning. And I think it's something I want to do for a very long time, potentially have that eventually be my livelihood, or part of it at least.
Mhm.
So it's more that it's given my life this really wonderful sense of direction. And yeah, so not so much in terms of the talking about it. While I love doing that, it's been more that, like, I'm like, oh no, I know what I want to do with myself now.
Mhm. Because you've won two, don't you? Now you won two different podcasts. Is that correct? You won Before the
Yes, I
Chorus
have
and
to.
Solo Sounds. Yeah.
Yep,
Yes.
both my own. Yeah, I started both of them myself. First
Brilliant.
time doing that. Yes. I was on Amazing Radio for 3 years. I did student radio. I've done lots of random bits. But I started Before the Chorus, the interview one first, because one, I love people like Zane Lowe and Nardwar and Cheryl Waters, even like Sean Evans from Hot Ones, like
Let's
people
get
who
into that.
really,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I think genuinely think he's one of the best interviewers I've ever heard, and he deserves all the respect he gets. Um, but I felt like, as much as I loved doing my old radio show, I was very confined to like these sort of short, interviews, which never really allowed me to really unpack, like the stories and understand a human being behind music. And so I realized I needed to make my own space to do that, which is why I started my podcast. Because my favorite interviews are the ones where you come out really getting to know another human being, and not in this like invasive insider scoop on a celebrity way. I feel like just another person has kind of been in front of me telling their life story, and I feel more, I don't know, connected to the human experience through that. So I love being able to do that myself now. And
Mm.
then my second podcast, Solo Sounds, it's basically a radio show, but in podcast form. It's on Spotify only, but yeah, it's super fun. I've been having some really cool guest co-hosts on and having a blast with it.
That is so good. That's so good because you've spoken to some amazing people like Glass Animals, Alt J, Clipping, Future Islands. Do you have any personal favorite? Well, you mentioned, was it Julie Bakefield earlier. You mentioned,
Yeah, so
yeah,
Julian was a huge
Julian.
favorite.
Sorry.
Glass Animals, definitely. Glass Animals, to give them credit as well, they were my first like big interview. So I've interviewed them twice.
Mm.
Once for my podcast last year, but also back in 2017 for student radio. And again, I was shaking going into that because I was like 20 years old, first big interview, for uni radio. For some reason, they had picked me to do it. and they were so lovely, made me feel really comfortable. So it ended up going well, and in some ways that launched my career because the plugger really liked me, and she ended up giving me the LJ interview, and things sort of snowballed from there. And also when I interviewed them again in 2020, specifically Dave the singer, he remembered me. Like he's
Wow.
like, with everything that he's done over the last several years, he remembered who I am, and I just feel like that speaks volumes to who he is as a person. So I have a lot of time for the Glass Animals guys. Trying to think who else. I mean, clipping was huge for me. That was like, oh my god. I didn't talk about it in the podcast because I don't like kind of putting Divi Diggs in the Hamilton bubble because bless, like, everyone drops it. But I am a big fan of Hamilton. It does have its problems, especially with like colonial past, but we don't need to unpack that right now. But from a creative standpoint, I'm a huge fan. That's how I knew about him. And then I think Clipping are one of the most brilliant groups out there right now. They're so intelligent about the way they work. It almost feels like they're kind of putting a movie on in your mind because of how, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? They're just really great storytellers.
Ah,
Jonathan and William are, I think it almost feels like the work of a set designer. Like they just build an environment around whatever David is singing about. So you just get these very complete thoughts and complete pictures with every song and every record. So yeah, that was a real treat. And also I think that David got interviewed by Jimmy Fallon the same day because he's
really?
wearing the same outfit in an interview that came out the same day that I interviewed them.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, what's going on? Yeah, so that was pretty wild. But yeah, those two are all the ones I mentioned are way up there.